Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, no doubt, starts now. Representatives from Congress interfere with ICE. Elton John's in the news. Utah Senator Mike Lee and Kentucky Rep. Massey in the news. President Trump floats ending federal income tax. And we're just getting started, ladies and gentlemen. Not to mention preemptive pardons that Donald Trump regrets. Let's start now, shall we? All right, Donald Trump reads the snake poem. Let's start with that, and then we'll get to the reason I bring it up. Here it is.
Right. This was written by Al Wilson a long time ago. And I thought of it having to do with our borders and people coming in. And we know what we're going to have. We're going to have problems. We have to very, very carefully vet. We have to be smart. We have to be vigilant. So here it is, the snake. It's called The Snake. On her way to work one morning, down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake. His pretty-colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. "Poor thing," she cried, "I'll take you in, and I'll take care of you." The border. "Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the vicious snake. She wrapped him up all cozy in a comforter of silk and laid him by her fireside with some honey and some milk. She hurried home from work that night, and as soon as she arrived, she found that pretty snake she'd taken in had been revived. "Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed that vicious snake. She clutched him to her bosom. "You're so beautiful," she cried. "But if I hadn't brought you in by now, oh heavens, you would have died." She stroked his pretty skin again and kissed him and held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, that snake gave her a vicious bite. "Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the vicious snake. "I have saved you," cried the woman, "and you've bitten me, heavens, why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die." "Oh, shut up, silly woman," said the reptile with a grin. "You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in."
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Why do I bring this up? We're going to use that as context as we talk today about Donald Trump's decision-making. Trump issued a preemptive pardon for a new rep, Representative Henry Cuellar, a Democrat congressman from Texas, who was indicted, along with his wife, believe it or not. I don't know how to say his wife's name. Imelda, I think it is. Just last year on charges of bribery, conspiracy, and money laundering. Days after the pardon, Cuellar announced his decision to run for Congress. Yeah, he's going to run for the election in 2026, maintaining his allegiance to the Democratic Party. Trump expressed his dissatisfaction on social media, criticizing Cuellar. Lack of loyalty, saying you're working with the same left scum. Donald, I remind you of the snake. Dr. Bradley, what do you say?
there's so many things that Donald Trump has done lately that I use the word enigma a lot because it's just it's enigmatic. I don't understand. I mean, whether it's the former president of Honduras being pardoned, who was apparently convicted of doing the same stuff that Madera is accused of doing, only with more conviction, because every time they bring up something against Venezuela and fentanyl, I go, huh? Fentanyl doesn't come through that path. Some of the boats that are being picked up are going to Europe, apparently. I mean, there's just it's just I can't understand it at all. And that snake story has been around for many decades with many different variations, but it all has the same outcome. They end up getting bitten by the largest.
So, are you surprised?
Paid. Say again?
Are you surprised this Democrat decides to run for election? I mean, it's a representative, right? They love to be reelected. Of course, this congressman's going to run for election again. Donald Trump expressing dissatisfaction, like, oh my gosh. What about loyalty? You're working with the left scum. This guy, I mean, he's the snake. What does Donald expect to happen? Okay, but Donald does the same thing with the deep state. Donald's doing the same thing internationally. Donald partners with this thug communist mayor of New York. Donald partners with bad actors all across the globe, acting like somehow they'll be his friend. Doesn't he get it? I just don't really understand it, Dr. Bradley.
Well, here's kind of what I think. I think he's building up chits at the table. He's there in a let's make a deal kind of environment where perhaps there is some leverage or some largesse or some favor that he hopes to gain from some of these people that he's dealing with. I don't make the connection.
You're not going to win at that game, Doctor.
Well, I understand that. But the fact of the matter is he plays that game, let's make a deal, constantly, whether it's some war zone or it's something with a foreign power that ends up giving him an airplane or it's just one of those things that's the way he seems to do business. And perhaps you call in those chits at some place when you're in a hole and he needs a vote and he calls the guy and says, I'm calling in that marker. I don't know exactly, but it is a strange kind of way of doing business. And by the way,
the same thing with trying to work with the Federal Reserve Chair, criticizing them, hating on them, appointing them, playing games with them. The Federal Reserve is the biggest snake in the room.
Certainly the Federal Reserve is, but they continue to place people in positions of power. And to me, it's really kind of weird. It seems to me like, for example, the opposite is happening in some of his people that he's worked with. Bobby Kennedy doesn't seem to have quite as much support as I would have hoped he had been.
Amen to that.
And when they're making deals to put the fat serum on reduced price kind of thing, it's like I personally know people that have used those products, and all the intonation that they do on there. Don't use this if you're allergic to it. Don't do this if you want one kidney to fail or whatever. I have personally known people that have had some very deleterious effects from some of those things. And I just have to wonder why you put your support behind things that seem to have very little justification.
Well, and so many other benefits. The FDA in general. Why is the Food and Drug Administration approving these drugs, much less forcing a government discount? Since when did the government have delegated responsibility to be in the drug decreasing cost or price fixing, manipulating business? But secondarily, though, saying these things are healthy and effective and everything else, when the fact is we know they're not. What gives with that? It's insane.
And it's just the whole process is a question mark in my mind. the whole deal, you look at the way there's talk anyway about somehow extending these Affordable Care Act credits. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years is on the table, is what I've heard about.
They will, or the government will shut down in January, and the Republicans will get the blame this next time.
Well, that's the thing is that none of this, not one shred of it, has any justification constitutionally. And the whole Affordable Care Act violates the whole charter of the nation. And
other than that, it's not so bad,
I guess.
All right, she says it's bothering me. Who? Well, she's a new Democratic representative. I don't know how to say her name either. Greg Alva? Anyway, she's involved with ICE agents in a very problematic way. We'll break it down for you in seconds.
Attention collectors and savvy investors. We are excited to announce a momentous evolution in our journey. Introducing Free Water Coin Company, formerly known as Rust Coin and Gift. This rebranding takes us back to the very roots of where it all began. Free Water, Oregon. It's a tribute to the legacy of Al Rust and a celebration of 3 generations of dedication to excellence in the world of coins and precious gifts. Al, Brian, and Jake Rust standing strong through 64 years of service. Discover a world of exceptional service at Free Water Coin Company, your premier destination for genuine, honest money and precious gifts. Under Brian's expert guidance, Free Water Coin Company, building on the legacy of Rust Coin and Gift, continues its tradition of trust and excellence. Visit us at our Provo, Utah location. Explore our treasures online at freewatercoinco.com or call us at 801-377-1574. Free Water Coin Company, where your future is built one honest coin at a time.
As you are aware, America is divided over every fault line possible. This is intentionally fostered by those who do not love God, family, or country. We believe a peaceful future as a free people absolutely depends on civility. Clarion Call for Civility is looking for funding and volunteers at every level to make our hopes and efforts a reality. Please donate, sign our pledge, and help us in our sacred cause. Please visit callforcivility.com for more details. Callforcivility.com.
Bypass the mainstream narrative with Liberty News Radio at libertynewsradio.com. Engage with charismatic hosts live or on demand. We cover the crucial news focused on God, family, and country. News that other networks simply refuse to use. Think of LNR's hard-hitting news and podcasts at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Join us at libertynewsradio.com. Empower your day with the truth, because the truth will set you free. libertynewsradio.com.
All right, she says it's bothering me. That's the new rep, Greg Alva, or however you say her name. She's basically instructing ICE agents, WND.com, with this piece. She says ICE is a lawless agency under this administration, operating with no transparency, no accountability, and open disregard for basic due process. No family in our community should be in fear. I'm going to be after this until we get clear answers, she wrote. And then she basically created a video of herself talking about it. But let's watch the video of what actually happened first. Here it is. Check this out.
Watch out, watch out. Hey, put it down. Back up. Put it down. You're a city member of Congress.
You need to calm down. You guys need to calm down and get out. You need to get out. You need to get out.
I mean, this is insane, people.
Get out of the way. You guys need to clear now.
Wow. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just telling you, think about that. Okay, and then she says, when I presented myself as a member of Congress asking for more information, I was pushed aside and then pepper sprayed. But others say, and the video show, she wasn't really pepper sprayed. She was just in the way. I mean, she wasn't on the side saying, hey, can I speak to somebody about this or whatever else? She was literally getting in the middle of it, interfering. Now, here's her video of explanation. I want you to see if it matches what you saw. Here it is.
Hi, it's Adelita Grijalva. We just came up on a community that was protecting their people. We had, I would say, maybe 40 ICE agents, most of them masked, in several vehicles that the community had stopped right here, right in the middle of the street, because they were afraid that they were taking people without due process, without any kind of notice. And so I was here. This is like the restaurant I come to literally once a week, and was sprayed in the face by a very aggressive agent, pushed around by others when I literally was not being aggressive. I was asking for clarification, which is my right as a member of Congress. So once introduced myself, once I did, I assumed that it would be a little calmer, but there was literally only one person that was trying to speak to me in any kind of civil tone, and everyone else was being rude and disrespectful. And I just can only imagine, if they're going to treat me like that, how they're treating everybody else. So we saw it. We saw people directly sprayed, members of our press, everybody that was with me, my staff member, myself, 2 staff members we have like remnants of whatever they sprayed on us. Excuse me, it's bothering me. And I think that this is one of the problems, the biggest problem that we have in this community, is that we have Trump that has no regard for any due process, the rule of law, the Constitution. They're literally disappearing people from the streets. They arrested 2 people. We have no idea where they're going. And I want to thank Tucson Police Department for coming and taking care of the space, making sure that everyone was safe once ICE left. And you can see that traffic is back to normal because of them. And so they were not the aggressors here. They arrived on the scene after ICE was already here and after there was a block in the street. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear. I want to protect the people in this community, and that's why I showed up. I think it's important for me to have eyes on what's happening here and not just have it be, stories through other people. So I'll keep you posted if I hear anything.
All right,
else.
there you have it. We can let that go. So, Dr. Bradley, I want to get your take on this thing, because what she's saying and what really happened doesn't jive, number one. Number two, what we're doing is we're creating a divide between the general government and their responsibility to protect the border and deal with illegal aliens and communities that want to push back and say that the Trump administration is the problem here. She goes on and explains there's no due process. That's not necessarily true. A lot of these people have been vetted in advance. That's how they know to go to these communities and find these individuals. And I guess the real problem that I'm having with it is we're creating all kinds of problems. We're getting the American people used to the government going after people. She's half right and half wrong on this. We don't want people, being disappeared. We don't want the government dragging people off the streets. At the same time, we have an invasion, an illegal criminal invasion that's happened under the Biden team that Trump's trying to recover from. He's in a very difficult position. Due process after they take him off the streets hopefully will happen, because I do believe in due process. At the same time, if you give these people notice, they'll disappear themselves. So it's a very strange dichotomy that we're seeing. But I submit the main point is they are educating the people to be afraid. They are educating the people that government will be coming to your community. And if they don't like what you're doing, they're going to take you out. There's a justifiable reason in this case or in these cases. But how long will it stay that way under different leaders as president and under different administrations? Doctor?
Well, there's so many issues here. It's very interesting. You've got a context you can put things in where you see what was actually happening versus what was presented afterwards. That needs to happen more often, where people do get something, they can put it in context and say, wait, this is totally different than what we were presented. So that's an important aspect of this. And I think that what you just presented is, it really does help us understand how things can be spun. But in addition to that, she's kind of like a solution looking for a problem. I mean, she was trying to get center stage, it looked like, on everything. Nobody was giving her any attention. There was no center stage, and she kept trying to inject herself into the three-ring circus, and that three-ring circus is what they're using to disrupt, well, in all across the nation. This idea, it's a conflict-based kind of situation that communists have always used to overthrow nations. They create a problem, they stir it up, they build divisions. A nation divided against itself, and the balkanization and all those kinds of things, until finally society breaks down, and their hope is to replace it with their flavor of the tyranny that they're promoting. And this woman on a small scale looks like she was trying to play in that game. It's just the old communist disruption thing, community agitators that do these things. And she just wanted her 15 seconds of fame. It looked to me like she.
Yeah. So explain how it ought to work constitutionally then. You have an illegal invasion. You've got criminals on our streets that are hardened criminals, released from prisons from foreign nations, gang members, rapists, murderers. They mocked Donald when he claimed that right at the very start on his first, campaign trail. They mocked him and they said, oh my gosh, he's crazy. He's just a racist. It's the color of their skin. They're not criminals. Now we're blatantly seeing that they are criminals. We do have an invasion. So on one hand, Trump has every right as the general government to deal with this. When does it go too far? How do we ferret that out when it comes to due process and the states and the mayors and different people pushing back? How do we deal with this, Doctor? They always find ways to create conflicting scenarios and then exploit that and increase power, right?
Well, they certainly do, and they're very good at it. Look at the Bolshevik Revolution or the Franco-Prussian War. I mean, every single aspect of this has been carried out by a similar kind of modus operandi. Congress has the responsibility to create immigration law. The president has responsibility to enforce it. And those laws are created constitutionally if Congress does it. If the ICE guys are making their own laws and doing it, well, that's unconstitutional. And there are so many things that end up happening with this, but once everybody's kind of rounded up and they get a chance to sort their beans at the end of the day, then the process should work with an independent agency called the judicial that's evaluating these things. So all three branches are involved and all have a role to play. And it's just one of those things. The system will work if allowed to do so, but we get agitators like this congresswoman that come out there and try and stir the pot and actually ultimately and finally cause the system to break down. Within Congress, she has a responsibility to facilitate just laws that are being passed. And the president's only responsibility is to carry those laws out as the executor.
And the court's responsibilities is to interpret them if there's a conflict and say this is what Congress means. If the courts get it wrong, we shouldn't think it's final. Congress can go back and correct what the courts claim is wrong. What the courts can't do is change the law or make law with their interpretations. And that's what we got to be very careful of as well.
Certainly. So everybody has a role. There's a separation. There's checks and balances. There's a delegation of authority, and all of that stuff's in the Constitution. And what we have is agitators that are literally trying to disrupt society to the point that the Communist Manifesto can be the banner flying over the nation.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. The snake's getting Donald from every direction right now, sad to say. We've got to work on it. The answer for President Trump is to use the Constitution religiously. In other words, absolute dedication to the principles therein. That, in my humble opinion, is how you stay out of jail. When we come back, Elton John praising the Donald, tells him what he can do to get an incredible legacy. We'll tell you about that in seconds, and then my recommendation of what Trump can do to create a legacy. Hang tight. Liberty Roundtable live.
Protecting your liberties. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. The power of the presidency in personnel matters. That's the issue today before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Lawyers for the administration are defending President Donald Trump's decision to fire Federal Trade Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter without cause. The court's 6 conservative justices have already signaled strong support for the administration's position over the objection of their 3 liberal colleagues, by allowing Slaughter and the board members of other agencies to be removed from their jobs even as their legal challenges continue to play out. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
After granting him a pardon, the president is now upset with Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar.
Last week, the president pardoned the Texas Democrat and his wife in a federal bribery and conspiracy case. He claimed the two were prosecuted because Cuellar had been critical of Joe Biden's immigration policies. But now Donald Trump is angry that Cuellar plans to run for re-election as a Democrat rather than switch parties. He blasted the congressman on social media for his lack of loyalty, suggesting the president was hoping the pardon would boost the size of the GOP's slim majority in the House. Greg Clugston, Washington.
Japanese authorities say a powerful earthquake has struck off Japan's northern coast. A tsunami alert issued. Nothing yet on damage or injuries. Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan says Republicans have a health care plan, a replacement for the heavily subsidized Obamacare scheme.
We want a bill in the health care area that health savings accounts, association health plans, ability to purchase insurance across state lines, all those things that create more choice, more competition, and bring down costs. We want versus more subsidies into a system that just has all kinds of fraud.
The Ohio Republican speaking with the Salem Radio Network. On Wall Street, the Dow is down about 50 points, the NASDAQ trading 36 points higher. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Ask yourself this question. Is it really worth holding on to that timeshare that you know you need to get rid of? Here's the truth. The average maintenance fee just went up over 17%. That could have been 117%, and there's nothing you can do about it. When you buy a timeshare, you give them a blank check for annual maintenance and assessment fees. I'm Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group. For 15 years, I've helped over 50,000 families cancel their timeshare. Not sell it, not transfer it, cancel it. Did you buy a timeshare because they told you it was a great investment and your maintenance fees would never go up? That's a lie. Are you ready to get rid of your timeshare once and for all? Simply call us and I'll send you our timeshare exit kit that explains all your options for cancellation.
Call Wesley now for your timeshare exit kit. 800-366-6161. That's 800-366-6161. 800-366-6161.
Introducing Managed IT Services from NPI. We offer top-notch data backup and recovery, email spam protection, and network security tailored to your needs and budget. With 20-plus years of experience in the medical field, our HIPAA-certified consultants know what it takes to protect sensitive information. Don't settle for less. Give us a call at 801-706-6980 and experience the difference with Managed IT Services. Remember, your IT support should be fast, efficient, and reliable.
Introducing PrepStartsNow.com, your ultimate guide to readiness and peace of mind. We offer practical preparedness tools, training, and education to take your family's household readiness to the next level. Browse the prep shop for essential products, check out our planning guides, and stay informed with our prep blog. Visit PrepStartsNow.com and subscribe to our emails for exclusive offers, new products, and future events. Remember, preparedness begins with PrepStartsNow.com.
You know where the solution can be found, Mr. President? In churches, in wedding chapels, in maternity wards across the country and around the world. More babies will mean forward-looking adults, the sort we need to tackle long-term, large-scale problems. American babies in particular are likely going to be wealthier, better educated, and more conservation-minded than children raised in still industrializing countries. As economist Tyler Cowen recently wrote, quote, "By having more children, you're making your nation more populous, thus boosting its capacity to solve climate change. The planet does not need for us to think globally and act locally so much as it needs us to think family and act personally. The solution to so many of our problems, at all times and in all places, is to fall in love, get married, and have some kids."
All right, Donald Trump likes to refer to the Rocket Man. John Elton comes to mind, right? I'm sorry, Elton John comes to mind. And Elton John is praising Donald Trump big time. Very strange, very liberal, promoting the gay, lesbian, bisexual, whatever agenda for a long time. But Elton John jumping on Trump's bandwagon right now. All the naysayers of Trump are jumping on the bandwagon right now. I think they're in fear. If they don't go along with Trump, it might be curtains for their futures. But nevertheless, Elton John says, quote, if Trump helps deliver on the long-standing goal of ending AIDS, it would cement a historic legacy. I'd love to end any disease for that matter, any illness or whatever like that. I understand. But to me, that's a very unique, weird agenda. Now, we agree that Donald needs to look domestically, not internationally, for success, especially for the midterm and eventually the 28 election cycles. I get it. However, I think a little differently, Dr. Bradley. I think Utah Senator Mike Lee and Kentucky Representative Thomas Massey, they introduced legislation to abolish the Federal Reserve. Okay? The bill is titled the Federal Reserve Board Abolition Act. The bill, known in its 2025-2026 incarnation, it's H.R. 1846. 1846, that's in the House. The companion bill in the Senate is S. 869. The legislation also would repeal the 1913 Federal Reserve Act that originally created the system in the first place. Both bills are currently at the referred to committee stage. What does that mean? It means nothing has happened. No markups, no discussions, no floor votes have occurred whatsoever. So they're just in the we submitted them and nothing's happened stage. Mike Johnson and company holding it up. Whatever the clown group is in the Senate. Fed independence is what we really need, folks. They want you to believe that is a quasi-fascist deal where a banking cartel can control our money, where Congress somehow delegates that to the banking cartel, and they say, well, the Federal Reserve Board is a government agency, but the carrying out of it is this banking consortium. The fact is, it's a fascist criminal enterprise. There's no other way to say it. It does not square with the Constitution in any way, shape, or form. And what people want to do is give me little arguments like, oh, well, the Congress created this, and so it's legitimate. It's a law. No, it's not. It conflicts with the supreme law of the land. Therefore, it's pretend legislation, as the founding fathers would call it, as they did in the Declaration of Independence. You cannot have laws that supersede the supreme law of the land. So it's criminally created from the beginning. It's a fascist organization. Congress has never been delegated the authority to print paper and assign fake values to that paper in the first place. It needs to be shut down. And if we truly want Fed independence, then why don't we get rid of the Fed and let the people be in charge of the money? Let the markets, the free markets, deal with supply and demand. Let interest rates arrive at their natural interplay. And then we'll have true independence. Not of the Fed. We don't want Fed independence. It'll be independence of the economic system. Independent from government where it belongs. The only role the government has at the general level is to coin money. And Congress can regulate the value thereof, but not paper. Okay, not creating something out of nothing. They can coordinate the intrinsic value relationships between gold and silver. They can, but yet they don't have authority to do anything else. States only have the authority to accept this legal tender coin. Honest, asset-based, intrinsic value-based money. The whole thing's a flat-out fraud and needs to be shut down. So if Donald Trump wants a legacy, Dr. Bradley, I submit he shuts down the Federal Reserve immediately. There's an act in Congress to do it right now in both the House and the Senate that hasn't even been touched, and I haven't heard Donald really speak out on that at all. All he wants to do is get his buddy in the Federal Reserve chair, as opposed to somebody else's buddy. Do it the Republican way, not the Democrat way. It's a scam. And until we call it that and shut it down, we'll never have honesty in society because every transaction is backed by dishonesty at this point. Doctor?
Well, you bring up about 24 issues that I'd love to spend about a half an hour on each one, because there's so much in the backstory that hopefully people will come to see what you're talking about has great merit. The Federal Reserve is a private banking consortium. It is not federal, and there's no reserve. It's a funny money, private for-profit organization. And so we have a great deal of challenge with that. I mean, and people want to read about the creature from Jekyll Island. I'd read Edward Griffin's book by that title. Magnificent little book. It's a page turner. But the Federal Reserve has been abolished before, in theory, and maybe not that exact name, but back during Andy Jackson's administration, he was able to get rid of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, he ratted them out and called them a den of vipers, speaking of snakes, right?
Well, yeah, that's for sure. But what happened was Nicholas Biddle, who was the Federal Reserve chair effectively at that time, threw an economic temper tantrum. There was a shakeup in the markets in the United States for a period of time, but a very stabilized economy came out of that with real money. And people were able to have, they call it general welfare. That's a stable, predictable government. And one of those major portions of that is that the economy is not going to be subject to disruption. And this private banking consortium, Bernanke admitted they caused the 1929 collapse, the Great Depression. And they're manipulating and jacking around with everything they want to do it all the time. And it's really according to their rules that this whole economy is playing. And since 1913, when this was passed, the United States has lost approximately just about 98% of the value that the dollar had in 1913. So 112 years ago.
And if their whole goal was to preserve the dollar and tamp down or have what they call, quote, low but sustainable inflation, that's a fraud and a lie too. It does everything opposite of that. Inflation, I don't care if it's 2% continually, it'll eventually destroy the nation. And no nation that goes to a fiat fake money system based on no value whatsoever, based on fraud, survives it, Doctor.
No, that's an historical fact. We can go back to the beginning of time when they were making fiat currency. That's money that was declared by the government to be money, even though it really wasn't. They actually debated this in August of 1787 of the Constitution Convention. And there was a motion before the body to say we will be able to create money out of thin air. They called it writs, basically these paper dollars that had no value, and they debated it. And during that discussion, which they rejected it, they did this a couple of times, they said that it was as dangerous as the mark of the beast spoken of in the book of Revelation if they allowed that creation of paper money that had no backing. Now, you can write IOUs that have got, real money behind it.
Yeah, but that's private citizens can do that. Governments can't. They haven't been delegated any authority to do that.
Right, and they coin money, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5. And coining money has to, go look it up in the old Noah Webster Dictionary. It has to do with stamping precious metals. It doesn't have to.
And if Dr. Bradley wants to give Sam some money and Sam gives Dr. Bradley an IOU as a private contract, the only government role is to make sure that contract is honored.
Correct. And so government really is kind of a, I don't know what you'd call it.
It's a rogue criminal enterprise when it comes to fiat currency.
But it's not supposed to be a player in it. I mean, the markets will seek their own value. And right now, gold is, I don't know, probably $4,200 an ounce, and silver is probably close to 60, I'm guessing. So $59 an ounce, something perhaps. But those are set by free markets. They're supposed to be anyway. I think there's manipulation that's going on in that right now, too, because gold and silver have some ratio dynamics that they haven't had historically. And there's probably some manipulation going on there, too. But if you take gold, you have it in your physical possession, and you can hold on to it or trade it for a house or a bike or whatever else you want. So the government is simply, right now, they've abrogated their responsibility to create a safe, predictable, stable government, that general welfare thing.
It's a criminal enterprise, though, is the problem.
Well, it is indeed. And sadly, Utah has been at the very center of that for a long time because one of the original early chairman of the Fed was a Utah boy, and he manipulated the whole thing. And he was actually a Keynesian economic guy, a debt money guy, long before John Maynard Keynes was. So Utah's had a hand in this thing, and it just needs to change. And the problem is they've got a bill before them right now that they sent off to, kind of jail when they sent it to a committee. That's where they let most of those bills die.
It just basically will waste away and die if we, the people, don't demand different. However, President Trump, he's floating ending the income tax, ladies and gentlemen. He says surging tariff revenue can replace it. We'll talk about it. Liberty Roundtable Live.
Former Sheriff Richard Mack recounts in his book The Proper Role of Law Enforcement how he came to realize while working as a beat cop how wrong the all-too-common orientation of police officers is when they think of their job as being to write tickets and arrest people. Richard Mack tells of his personal transformation from by-the-number cop to Constitution-conscious defender of citizen safety and freedoms. Learn what it really means to serve and protect. Purchase your copy at CSPOA.org. That's CSPOA.org.
Get ready to be part of something incredible. We're breaking barriers and delivering the powerful stories that mainstream media won't touch. Your support is what fuels our mission to revolutionize journalism and bring you the truth. Join our passionate community of changemakers by donating at libertynewsradio.com today. Together, we're creating the future of news.
The Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit legal foundation committed to protecting our unalienable right to publicly acknowledge God. The Foundation for Moral Law exists to restore the knowledge of God in law and government and to acknowledge and defend the truth that man is endowed with rights not by our fellow man, but by God. The Foundation maintains a twofold focus. First, litigation within state and federal courts. Second, education. Conducting seminars to teach the necessity and importance of acknowledging God in law and government. How can you help? Please make a tax-deductible contribution, allowing Foundation attorneys to continue the fight. You may also purchase various Foundation products as well at morallaw.org. Located in Montgomery, Alabama, the Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 founded by Judge Roy Moore. Please partner with us to achieve this important mission. morallaw.org.
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. Donald Trump floats ending federal income tax. He claims that, hey, surging tariff revenue, hey, we just won't need it. We'll have so much money rolling in, it won't even be funny. Trump said that federal income tax could be drastically cut or even eliminated if rising tariff revenue keeps accelerating. Donald claims the government is collecting so much from tariffs that the U.S. may no longer need income tax at all. Such a move would upend the entire federal funding system, as income taxes currently remain the largest source of government revenue, while tariffs are only a small percentage. Transforming that idea into law, though, ladies and gentlemen, will require major action from Congress, where support is far from guaranteed. Experts say that eliminating the federal income tax, it's extremely unlikely in the midterm or the short term. Tariffs would need to rise massively and remain stable. Well, I want to kind of take the middle road here and point out Donald's right. We could get rid of the federal income tax. We could replace it with tariffs. What you'd need to do, though, is probably add some apportionment taxes, at least at first, where the states would pay the general government upon good behavior, which I advocate for. But most importantly, the only way this will work, Donald, let me just be very clear. I hope you're listening. I'm a self-appointed Trump advisor, so listen carefully. You've got to reduce spending. Nothing will support the current system if you don't reduce spending. But see, you got to get rid of the Federal Reserve because that interest is going to eat you alive. That interest will never, ever end. And you have no way ever to get out of debt with the current fiat money system. The Federal Reserve banking cartel has absolute monopoly on money. That's why it's monopoly money. And there's no way to get out of debt. You couldn't even have enough dollars to get out of debt if you tried. Because if you borrow $1 and there's interest, where do you get the interest payment? Well, you have to borrow more money. There's only one place to get money. See, it's designed to fail, and you'll never get out of debt. Well, Sam, we can live with that debt. Let's just decrease it. Fine. But you're going to have to decrease spending massively. So I don't know if they understand, but this IRS could be abolished right away. The Federal Reserve could be abolished right away. But you're going to have to get a handle on spending no matter what you do, no matter where you go. The only answer is to decrease government, put it on we're making these drugs, these diet drugs for less money so people can get them. And we need to do that same thing to government, doctor.
Well, let's talk about what's going on here. We have a scenario that's building that could ultimately end up in being the worst of all scenarios, where you continue to have your IRS and your income tax and all of those revenue streams in place, and then going with a high tariff situation, which ultimately and finally they're just still taking money from the people that should never have been taken. Arguably 80% of the funding that the federal government spends is unconstitutional. I think we can go back and look at that as we compare each program against the authorized activities of the general government. But I think another thing that's at play here is Trump is he's doing a paid political announcement, if you will, in regards to his run at the tariff thing with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, if it follows the plain English words of the United States Constitution, is going to pour Trump back in his bottle about the way he's gone about the tariff thing. Tariffs are constitutional. That is authorized. Look at Article 1, Section 8. But the fact of the matter is that the president does not exercise that authority. That authority comes through the United States Congress. Congress needs to take action. Now, the other side of it is, I believe that Trump will lose before the Supreme Court. He's got some stuff in his back pocket he thinks he's going to be able to pull out and continue to do what he wants to do, again, which will be run through the courts and find out it's unconstitutional likely. But what needs to happen is that,
by the way, it should be the courts and Congress that are both challenging Trump on these unconstitutional actions, not just the courts.
Well, here's the deal, though. You look at the revenue streams. We have trillions, literally, coming in via an income tax type environment. We have billions. A billion is 1,000th of a trillion. We have billions coming in with tariffs, but they do not have that $1 trillion magic number behind them. So tariffs could not possibly bring about the same revenue stream that income tax is. So I believe that Trump is trying to convince it's part of his program to try and convince the courts that this tariff thing is a good thing, so they won't rule against him. But they don't have a possibility, the slightest possibility, of bringing in the amount of revenue that the income tax is bringing in. So somebody's going to say, hey, wait a minute, we already got this in place. Let's not dump the income tax. Let's just go in and do the tariffs too, and we'll have the worst of all worlds. And so what really needs to happen is constitutionally, the general government needs to be brought back to the substance that it was designed to be, and get out of the business of this 80% of whatever their revenue is. So what if it's 86% or 82%, whatever? It's something over 80% likely that we need to get out of that business. The Affordable Care Act nonsense, for example, all of the entitlement systems are all unconstitutional. There is not.
Well, if you look at interest in the entitlement systems, that's what, 70% of the budget at least? Then you add foreign aid and all that, and you get 80+% of the budget?
Well, the foreign aid's absolutely unconstitutional and should be done away with completely. But the fact is, if your income tax, your interest payment is $1 trillion, which it's crossed that barrier now. If you look at the total income if you will, of the United States government. Over $1 trillion of that every year goes to pay the banksters for the use of their money that has been created out of thin air largely. Okay, so
and every penny paid to the banksters is criminal spending.
Absolutely. So it's a very complex problem, and we've dug ourselves a pretty deep hole. But the original perspective, as put forth in the United States Constitution, is literally the solution to it. And we're going to have to wean ourselves away from this, mess of pottage that we've been selling our heritage for.
Abolish the Fed, abolish the IRS, reduce spending, restore constitutional currency, and you might be on your way to success. But instead of helping that bill by Thomas Massie and Mike Lee get on the national stage for open debate and discussion and hopeful passage, Trump hasn't said a word about it. But Trump did suggest that the U.S. should rename soccer as football. It was during a Q&A at the World Cup 2026 or 2025 Kennedy Center event. And he explained the naming conflict. You got to find the new name for the NFL games and call soccer football. And what do we call it? Tackle ball? What do you call it, Doctor? He wants to spend time renaming football.
Well, I think that there's a lot of distraction going on. The smoke and mirrors and the bread and circuses, and everybody seems to think that some of those are central to what a president ought to be doing. Apparently,
I got to just call football Trump ball, and then you could call, football would be soccer, right?
Yeah, I think that recreation and all that kind of stuff is fun, but spoiled brats out throwing a ball around or kicking it to the tune of millions of dollars when we have really decent Americans that are struggling to pay their bills is kind of outside the purview of the president's responsibility.
Yes, it is. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We don't mean to be critical, but we do want to focus on things that can actually make a difference, solutions-oriented TV and radio. I believe the biggest thing we need to do is abolish the Federal Reserve and the income tax. I mean, the IRS is the Gestapo in America. Everybody's in fear of it. Even if you do your very best and file under the penalty of perjury, you're still in fear that you might not have it right and you might have trouble. And we need to decrease spending to make that happen. We need honest money and decrease spending, and nothing else will really work, Doctor.
Yeah, it's just a restoration of the original intent, and that's kind of my central theme of virtually everything I do, is trying to bring about that kind of concept. I mean, central to that is the godly-based limits and bounds of government, and I believe the founders really felt like they had hit the formula that they were inspired to do, and they felt the hand or finger or providence or God or whatever they were calling him that day, that they got a good solution. And it worked for a lot of years.
It may not be perfect, ladies and gentlemen, but it is, in my humble opinion, the supreme law of the land to point us to God, not government, with checks and balances to chain down all the bureaucrats. We don't seek for power. We seek to pull it down. And the quest would be to create a safe, liberty-loving nation that looks to God for protection and uses government to protect individual, God-given, inalienable rights. And it's hopefully the document in the country that'll usher in the Savior's return. That's what we need to keep our eye on the ball about, Doctor.
Yeah, I think that my reading of the scriptures is that God wants everybody to be free. If you go to the 4th chapter of Luke, which is it's what the Savior reviewed when he came into Nazareth at the beginning of his ministry, of the purposes that he came for. And it was to liberate captive. He was restating the 61st chapter of Isaiah. I think that's central to God's plan, is the freedom of his children. So we can go back to that. I think we'll be better off.
And we'll do our very best to have complete fidelity to that, ladies and gentlemen, and to advocate for that. We're not attacking any individual. We're talking principles, and we want to advocate for the principles that can make men free. And that's mankind, people. Don't go crazy on me. Thank you, Dr. Scott Bradley. His incredible work is at freedomsrisingsun.com. To Preserve the Nation Collegiate Series and his weekly webinars and more. freedomsrisingsun.com. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
I'm Sam Bushman. You are watching and listening to Liberty Roundtable Live, syndicated by the Loving Liberty Networks, lovingliberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save our constitutional republic.